Greetings, folks. I hadn't planned on making another video on this subject matter so quickly, but something happened last night after True Puka posted his video that made me compelled to speak about this, not only because we had been discussing it in other areas, but because I think it's something that needs to be said at this point, involving, of course, Phil Mason and his so-called attempts to I don't know what you would call it, use science to justify practically anything, including his harassment and militarization of his own subscribership so he can hunt and harass anybody who disagrees with him. What took place in the comments section of the video was what really sort of amazed me. And I've seen everybody from No Plum to Concordance to Dark Matter and various other fairly larger YouTube atheists engage in what I can only describe as apologetics for Phil Mason's behavior, and hence the title of this video. The reason that somebody like Phil Mason has become such a problem is because he was not reined in immediately when he started to manifest these character flaws and willingness to do and say anything to achieve his goal, whatever it is he's planning on doing. The truth is that after the Free Thought Blogs incident and everything that was surrounding that, Phil Mason should have been reined in. He should have either been charged with some sort of crime for breaking in or heavily sanctioned in some way. But he wasn't. In fact, many YouTube atheists gave him cover, justified what he did, and attempted to hair split in order to explain away the reprehensible behavior of Phil Mason and his subscribers. And that's what they're doing once again. And this is why YouTube atheism is a failure. No one has bothered to police the likes of Phil and other people. No one has bothered to actually rebuke them for anything. So now, this problem has grown out of control to the point where there are very few, if any, repercussions for him to act in the way that he does, and there are very few avenues for anybody to do anything about him. However, the bewildered ape figured out a way, a kind of novel way, and that way is to point out that Phil Mason has broken the law in the Czech Republic. I will link into the low bar the statutes in question. They are Articles 260, 261, and 261A involving hate speech and the Holocaust, all of which fall under the purview of Czech law, and all of which, might I add, Phil Mason has violated in one way or another through his conduct, especially with the Charlie Hebdo video. Read the statutes, they apply. Now, True Puka said that he would not personally do certain things when it comes to this kind of situation. I, up until recently, and when I mean recently, probably 2 to 3 months ago, probably wouldn't either. But I am left with a problematic dilemma, ethical dilemma, when I look at Phil Mason, the things he does, the people he hurts, and the conduct by which he conducts himself. And that is that we have no way of stopping him, save legal recourse at this moment in time. Now, I've seen Noel Plum in particular try to turn this into a discussion about free speech, and he disagrees with those laws and therefore thinks that Phil Mason should be immune from those laws. Absolutely incorrect. These are the sovereign laws of another nation, and they are applicable. He broke those laws. If he is reported and received sanctions for what he did, it's because he broke the fucking law, Noel, not because of what you perceive to be free speech. We don't give a shit what you think. Neither does the Czech Republic. Neither does any other country who has sovereign laws that you're supposed to follow when you're in their fucking country. This isn't a matter of free speech. This is a violation of a legal code. And let's be clear also here. Thunderfoot, his cronies, and everybody involved in this don't really give a flying fuck about free speech. You cannot sit there and claim to be in favor of free speech and think that Phil Mason is being threatened with legal sanction unduly, and then be okay with him doing things like DMCAing Coughlin and getting his channel shut down. Or complaining bitterly about the fact that Silver posted pictures, kind of like this, of Phil in various silly poses, especially onto the pornography, as satire, and he tried to flag Coughlin for it. You cannot sit there and protect free speech and then give this guy a pass when he violates it. This is what I'm talking about. There is no accountability from any of you. You do nothing to rein him in. Because, one, you're lazy. Two, it could risk you making yourself look like a dick. And you're all friends, so you don't want to harm anybody. And if you're concordants, you have this very naive idea about how the world works, and we are in the free market of ideas. Bullshit! If it was a free market of ideas, these ideas should have been discarded long ago as being terrible. None of you have done anything to stop this guy. None of you have done anything to make him face consequences. And that's where myself and others are sitting right now in terms of what should be done with Phil, that he has broken the law. The first time, nobody sanctioned him. This time, there's a chance that he could receive sanctions, although I can't know for sure. And in terms of an ethical dilemma, what is the ethical dilemma here? I have to admit, I have to change my mind on this. If I see a crime being committed and do nothing, I am morally and ethically responsible for doing nothing, even if I face no consequences for that. If you see a crime being committed, don't you have an obligation to report it? Don't you have an obligation to observe the legal standings of whatever country you're in? Or respect the laws of those countries as a matter of due course? Yes, I think you do. Phil did this to himself. And for all of his attempts to blame victims for the things that happened to them, be it rape or harassment or all the things that he tries to engage in, like rape apologetics, pseudoscience, bulvarism, attempts at justifying the abhorrent behavior of his subscribership, deliberately militarizing his subscribership in an effort to be able to attack people. He never does this himself. He hides behind them and throws them out there like hand grenades. Phil doesn't engage people on his own. He's too much of a coward. And all of you are acting as his shield also. So to the concordances, to the null plums, to dark matters, I ask all of you this: when is enough enough? And when, might I add, does this problem become so acute that you will deal with it? Is it after he does something that gets somebody killed? Is it going to be after he does something that's so reprehensible that even YouTube has to shut him down? And no, I don't buy this argument that people have been making that, well, you're threatening his livelihood. No, he's even said 1,000 times at this point, maybe not 1,000, but we've heard him say that he only goes into the lab because he wants to so-called keep his mind sharp. It's hard to keep something sharp that is already so dull, though, first of all. And secondly, the primary motivation for him doing this stuff is his YouTube channel income. That's where his income is at. We can't do anything about that because it would involve DMCAing or shutting down his channel, and I don't particularly feel that is the way to go. But perhaps getting involved with sponsors, telling them what kind of a reprehensible human being this guy is, informing the Czech Republic of his malfeasance and his place of work. And I don't believe for 1 minute that he's informed them of this. We are talking about a man who is a proven liar. A man who has no scruples about lying, deceiving, acting like a snake, slithering around behind the scenes, doing all kinds of awful things to people and places and things. And all of you take his word for the fact that he says he reported this to his employer and even offered his 10 years resignation. Bullshit. This is a man who can't tell the truth. You know Phil's lying because his lips are moving. This is the kind of human being you all are giving cover to and doing nothing to stop. No kind of retort, nothing at all. All you can do is yammer on about this bullshit idea of free speech that none of you really give a shit about. It's not about free speech. I believe it's as, what was it, John Milton that said, only good men can love freedom truly, others love not freedom but license. That's what this is about, license to do whatever you want. You don't have that license. There's not that license here in the United States. There's not the license in the Czech Republic. You do not have the license to do whatever the fuck you want. Period. And if this is the only way to get him to face repercussions, perhaps it is the only way, because none of you have the balls to make him face repercussions. To get him to actually do something that would involve him backing off and stop being an asshole, and maybe, just maybe, stop being a lying, selfish prick in the process. But you guys have created this monster. You have allowed this monster to get out of control, and now it is destroying everything. You wonder why people don't take YouTube atheists seriously. Look in the fucking mirror. We cannot be expected for people to take anything that is said seriously when you have people in your movement who regularly endorse pseudoscience, body language, sexual dimorphisms, and explanation is why women don't go into STEM fields, who lies, misrepresents, strawmans, commits multiple logical fallacies, who takes things out of context, quote mines, engages in all kinds of reprehensible behavior. You cannot expect anyone looking from the outside in, seeing this take place, to take anything that is said seriously when you assholes won't police your own. That's the problem we're facing at this moment in time. So, if Phil does get, let's say, charged with something, if people decide they're going to start a letter-writing campaign, or they're going to, people en masse are going to contact his employer and contact the Czech Republic government and say, look, this guy's doing this, this, and this. You might want to look into it. Or contact perhaps people involved with Holocaust Memorial, because the Day of Remembrance is today, I believe. If people do that en masse, and then make Phil finally face consequences for his reprehensible behavior, maybe then something can be done. And the only reason that other people might take these kind of drastic actions, so to speak, is because none of you have made it possible to do anything else. The fault lies with the people who have given protection, who have given cover, and who have enabled Phil for years now. You guys are the ones responsible for this shit. And then you act indignant when people stand up and say, this guy's out of control, something has to be done. This is not what we want in our community. And then you yammer on about bullshit arguments with free speech and, oh, this isn't right. Bullshit. What he does isn't right. What he does is reprehensible. You're not okay with somebody contacting his employer and letting them know that he's a fucking psychopath who minimizes Hitler's involvement in the Holocaust, believes 90% of all rape is just bad sex, believes that body language actually tells you whether or not you're going to rape somebody, doesn't understand sexual dimorphism, makes multiple mistakes in his equations and his arithmetic, in terms of his science videos, and there have been, Bench Monkey has found this, Sequester Zone has found this, and Xavier has found this. All of them have found mistakes he's made, and they usually promptly are blocked by him, like I was when I was kicking his ass on Twitter along with Conference Report. That's what happens when this situation is allowed to go out of control. This is the guy you're giving cover to, and you're okay with that. This is supposed to be a community that's about science and reason and rational explanation, and yet the protection of Phil Mason is completely irrational. It has nothing to do with science and reason, and nobody wants to do anything about it. It's almost like we're the Catholic Church, and we have this pedophile priest who we just kind of keep shifting all over Europe and America to keep out of our hair and never do anything about him. Oh my God, we are the Catholic Church. Congratulations, you fucking clowns. We are now the Catholic Church. We have done the same thing. We shift around and ignore our problematic community members, people like Phil, people like Sargon of Akkad, these people that are involved in this. We just kind of put blinders on it and ignore it and never do anything about it. So, when we see Christians, for instance, say that atheists have no morality and that they don't understand what God does for them in their lives, even though most of us disagree with such a statement and believe that you can be completely moral without any kind of theological belief system attached to it, when they look in and see this, it is justification for what they believe. It is justification to say, see, look what these guys do. These are the kinds of people that atheism breeds. And because we have failed to police these assholes, this is how it's going to be perceived, at least on YouTube. Now, before I end this, I want to make clear that there are secular organizations out there who are working diligently without thought of reward or concept of fame right as we speak. And it's continuing to happen. There are good, solid organizations that have nothing to do with the internet or are only involved in the internet a little bit, who do very, very good work. And they're not running around attacking people like Anita Sarkeesian so they can get their PayPal bumped up a little bit more, which is what this is about with this fucking clown. It's financial motivation. So the Leviathan has been risen. We are now the Catholic Church. We are giving cover to a man who is a reprehensible piece of shit. And we refuse to do anything about him. That makes us no better than organizations who did the same thing. We are them. And that is why nobody can take anything that you guys do or say or advocate seriously. So here's what I propose. If there is some alternative way by which somebody can rein Phil Mason in, by all means put it forward. Because something clearly needs to be done about him and the other people who have been rousing up these lunatics in the MRA and other groups like Gamergate and other, butthurt man-children all over the internet, and have been sending them to hunt, harass, and go after the people they disagree with. If there is another way to rein these assholes in, by all means put it forward. But if not, if this is the only alternative that is now offered to us, we have a choice of reporting Phil Mason to the Czech authorities for the fact that he's broken the law. What are we expected to do then? You guys have not done your job. So it leaves us in a position of having to take a very drastic action if it is necessary. Personally, I think a violation of the law is a violation of the law, and therefore it demands consequences. He needs to face those consequences. Or else all of you need to get him under control. And get him to stop the shit that he's been doing. The hunting, the harassment, especially of women. That's what needs to happen. Now, if you guys don't have the balls to do it, the rest of us will take the matter into our own hands and deal with it however we see fit and however matters allow us to do so. If that means reporting him to the Czech authorities, so be it. I have no problem with this at this point. Not because I particularly find it appealing. To me, it's a choice of evils. If I do nothing, if Bewildered Ape does nothing, if the rest of us do nothing, Phil Mason carries on like nothing has happened. If we do something, we might actually have to do an action that we don't particularly agree with, but we feel we have to take in order to protect other people of this community. So you put us in this position. And the choice is now clear for most of us that something has to be done. If you guys manage to figure out a way, by all means take it. Then action won't need to be taken then. But if you can't, and we're left with no alternative than this, then I have no problem people reporting en masse to his place of employment and to the Czech government that he has broken the law. Because you have left us no other recourse. We have no way of redressing a grievance when this fucking clown does something horrible. He just ignores it, goes on his merry way, and then you guys protect him. You are his shield. That should be the new hashtag. We are Phil's shield. That should be a new trending hashtag on Twitter. Anybody who tweets anything about Phil Mason, put it in there. We are Phil's shield. Connected to Null Plum, Dark Matter, Concordance, all these assholes who are giving him cover. That's what needs to happen. Maybe shaming them into doing something will actually get them to move on this. But don't sit there and pretend like this is about free speech. Don't sit there and pretend like you're taking some sort of moral high road when all this shit's going on down in the gutter. And since Phil crawled out of the sewer, that's where a lot of us have to be now. In the fucking gutter dealing with this asshole. So, I want to hear a solution to this problem if you assholes can come up with one. Because right now, I don't see any other alternative at this point. And he has broken the law. Let's be clear on something here. This is not no, he broke the law. The statutes are pretty clear. Now, how they exactly would be applied would be a matter of interpretation. But the laws have been violated. And Phil is acting in his capacity as a so-called educator and scientist, as Puka has pointed out. If he would just say this is political, we wouldn't have a huge problem with it. But he's not doing that. It's like the abominable history man said. He routinely uses scientism and science to so-called debunk his opponents. He doesn't really ever do it because he doesn't really know much. He's a shitty scientist, and that's pretty obvious from the way he does things and conducts himself. But he's putting himself forward as that. If he's not that, then why are you listening to him? And if he is that, why aren't you holding him to the same standard you would hold a creationist to? Because a lot of his ideas are that stupid and have that little scientific evidence behind them. Link in the low bar to 2 videos I dealt with this on. All of them scientifically peer-reviewed sources in the low bars. Why is he not being held to the same standard the rest of us are, especially if we're academics or aspiring academics? Why aren't you guys holding him to that standard? I do this because it's a matter of course. I think that people should be able to access the information that I have. And if they can't access it directly, they know where it came from. I've even considered starting to put the page numbers of these things that I have in these books into the videos so that people know exactly where it is in the book itself, so that it's easy for them to get to and see what's being said and understand the context. Why are you not doing the same thing for him? Why does he get a pass when the rest of us don't? Or why does he get a pass when some of us take it a lot more seriously? Let's hear it. I want to hear what these people have in mind, if anything. Because I think that this community is as devoid of ideas as it is any kind of consideration for what's really going on. So right now, this is our problem. Phil Mason is the equivalent of a Catholic priest who has been molesting kids for 90 years. We are now the Church of Atheism, the Catholic Church of Atheism. All we do is keep ignoring him, protecting him, shifting him around. First he's in the United States, then Britain, now he's in Praha. And we ignore the problem. That's what we're doing. And the others too. Sargon of Akkad, Paul Elam, John the other sexist, racist assholes here on YouTube. That's what you're doing. You're just, well, let's pretend like it's not happening. You're no better than the fucking Catholic Church. And stop criticizing them for covering up scandals when that's what you guys are doing. You keep giving cover to a victimizer. You give cover to a pseudoscientist, a faux intellectual, a victimizer, a rape apologist, a Holocaust minimizer, at the very least, and a despicable human being who has broken the law. How are you any different than the Catholic organizations who did the same thing? You aren't. You are the same thing. And if that's what this is going to be about, then to hell with all of you. Because I don't want to be around that kind of hypocrisy. Period. So, get bent and come up with an idea to deal with this guy. Because we are vastly running out of options.